The city lights flickered against the evening drizzle as Alexander Knight, the cold and calculated CEO of Knight Enterprises, leaned back in his leather seat, reviewing financial reports on his tablet while his limousine glided through the streets. His life was made of deadlines, deals, and power. Anything outside that realm held no place in his heart. Just as the car stopped at a red light, a soft knock on the window startled him. Standing there was a small girl, drenched from head to toe, trembling as raindrops rolled down her pale cheeks. Her fingers clutched a worn-out envelope close to her chest. "Sir, can you read this letter?" "It's very important," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. His driver tried to wave her away, but something in her tearful eyes compelled Alexander to lower the window. The girl placed the envelope in his hand, then her knees buckled as she collapsed on the wet pavement. Instantly, Alexander and his driver rushed out, lifting her into the car. "Hospital. Now," he commanded, his heart pounding unnaturally fast. As the limousine sped through traffic, Alexander hesitantly unfolded the crumpled letter. The handwriting was shaky, childlike, yet heartbreakingly sincere. Dear Mr. Alexander Knight, I know you don't know me, but I know you. Please, my mom is very sick. We don't have money for medicine. I don't want to lose her. I don't want to be alone. His breath caught as he read the last line. Mommy cries sometimes and says your name. Shocked and confused, he glanced at the unconscious girl lying beside him, her small hand still tightly gripping the corner of his coat. Who was she? And why did her words pierce into a place he thought he no longer had, a heart? The hospital lights glared brightly as doctors rushed her away, leaving Alexander alone in the waiting room, still holding the letter that had just uprooted his entire world. Alexander barely slept that night. The little girl, whose name he learned was Emma, remained unconscious in the hospital room, her tiny hand wrapped in bandages, a tube delivering fluids to her frail body. He sat beside her, the letter still in his coat pocket, its words replaying in his mind like a haunting melody. Morning light filtered through the blinds when a nurse quietly entered and told him Emma was stable but needed rest, and that her mother's condition was far more concerning. With the address from the letter, Alexander stepped into a part of the city he hadn't seen in years, cracked pavements, faded buildings, quiet suffering hidden behind thin walls. He knocked on the door of a small, dim apartment. A weak voice called from inside. When the door creaked open, he froze. Standing before him was Grace. Pale, fragile, clutching her chest as though holding herself together. But he would recognize those eyes anywhere. Eyes filled with warmth, pain, and a past he abandoned. "Alex," she whispered, disbelief and heartbreak colliding in her voice. For a moment, time stopped. He stepped inside, noticing the near-empty shelves, unpaid bills stacked on the table, and a photograph of Grace holding a baby, Emma. His voice cracked as he asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked away. "You chose your world, Alex. I didn't want to beg for a place in it." He clenched his hands, guilt flooding through him. She coughed, her body trembling from weakness. "Why are you here now?" He slowly pulled out the letter. "Emma found me." Grace closed her eyes, pain and relief blending together. "Is she, all right?" He nodded. "She's safe. But she needs you. And so do I." Grace sank onto the worn-out couch, whispering, "It's too late." Alexander knelt beside her, voice trembling, "No. I won't leave you again." She looked at him, her voice barely a breath, "Alex. I'm dying." The words shattered whatever walls he had built around his heart. For the first time in years, Alexander felt truly powerless, not in business, but in love, regret, and time slipping away. Days blurred into each other as Alexander spent his mornings at Grace's bedside and his evenings sitting beside Emma at the hospital, waiting for her to fully recover. Neither mother nor daughter knew that the other was fighting a silent battle so close to the edge. Grace's health worsened rapidly, her breaths turning shallow, her voice soft as fading wind. Emma slowly regained strength, unaware that her mother was slipping away. One evening, while holding a warm cup of milk with trembling hands, Emma looked up at Alexander and asked, "Sir, when can I go home? I don't want Mommy to be alone." The question stabbed at his heart. He forced a smile. "Soon, I promise." Later, he brought Emma to Grace's room. Doctors said there wasn't much time left. Emma ran to her mother, tears streaming as she held her weak hand. Grace brushed her daughter's hair gently, whispering, "My brave girl." Her eyes then drifted to Alexander, silently asking him to stay strong. Emma, wiping her tears, took a deep breath and said, "Mommy, I don't want toys or birthday cakes this year. I just want a daddy. I want Mr. Alex to be my dad." Silence filled the room. Grace's eyes widened with shock before they softened with sorrow and hope. She turned to Alexander, her voice barely audible, "Please, don't let her be alone." Alexander's throat tightened as emotions he had buried for years rose violently within him. He nodded, tears breaking free. "I promise," he whispered. Grace smiled weakly, tears escaping the corners of her eyes, not of pain, but peace. Her hand fell limp in his, her heart silently surrendering. The room filled with a sharp, unwavering beep. Emma cried out, shaking her mother's arm, "Mommy, wake up. Please wake up." Alexander pulled her into his arms as she sobbed, her small body trembling. His world, once ruled by power and pride, shattered completely in that moment, not because he lost someone, but because he realized he had almost lost everything that truly mattered. Now he had a promise to keep, a little girl to protect, and a heart to learn how to heal. Rain softly pattered against the church windows as Grace's funeral came to an end, the sky mourning alongside the small gathering of neighbors who had known her kindness. Emma stood silently beside Alexander, clutching his hand like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Her eyes were swollen from crying, yet brave, just like her mother taught her. After everyone left, Emma walked toward her mother's grave, placed a folded paper heart beside the flowers, and whispered, "I'll be okay, Mommy. You said Daddy would take care of me." Those words struck Alexander deeper than any boardroom betrayal or financial loss ever had. That evening, sitting in the quiet of Grace's small apartment, Emma turned to him and softly said, "Can I stay with you, forever?" For the first time in years, Alexander didn't think with his mind, he thought with his heart. "Yes," he whispered, pulling her into his arms, "I'm your father, and you're my daughter. Always." Days turned into weeks, and the cold CEO the world once knew began to disappear. Alexander resigned from half his corporate roles, choosing instead to attend school meetings, braid Emma's hair, clumsily but lovingly, and read bedtime stories until she fell asleep on his lap. The penthouse he owned remained empty. Instead, he transformed Grace's modest apartment into a home full of laughter, warm meals, and framed photos of memories they were building together. One evening, Emma sat at the dining table, drawing a picture of three figures, herself, her mom in the clouds, and Alexander beside her with a smile. She looked up and said shyly, "Good night, Dad." He froze, then smiled through tears as he kissed her forehead. Years later, Alexander rebuilt his company, not on ambition, but on compassion, opening charity foundations in Grace's name to support single mothers and abandoned children. And on his office wall, in a simple wooden frame, hung the wrinkled letter that changed everything. The one that began with, "Can you read this letter? It's very important." It was no longer just a letter, it was the reason he found his heart again.